All right, I think we should be live. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Break the Rules live stream, the show that brings everybody together from all the different circles online and off. I'm your host, Lev Polyakov, and we are here today with two guests who were on Break the Rules before. Vish, you were on one time, Connor, Counterpoints, you were on a couple of times, and I love both of you guys' appearance. It's about high time that you guys got to speak to each other because the recent video that came out from yourself, Vish, you being on stage at the recent Christmas party at the New York Young Republicans Club, talking about total war, talking about all kinds of interesting stuff. And Counterpoints, you had the chance to watch the video, so I want to get into it. But before that, introductions as always. Vish Burra, you are the executive secretary of the New York Young Republicans Club. And Counterpoints, you are a war veteran, a former police officer, and you are an aficionado of Warhammer 40K, which I really dig as well. And hopefully we're going to get into it with Curtis Yarvin next week. That's going to be January 6th. So Counterpoints, double appearances, double booking of Counterpoints. That is happening on January 6th, Friday. Be there, be square, also 9 p.m. sharp. Anyway, Counterpoints, you had a chance to watch the video. Let me know what you think, and as always, everybody subscribe who have not subscribed yet, and add a like and click the bell and all that important stuff. But anyway, Counterpoints, you saw the video talking about total war. Give me your impression of the video, what we thought, and we're going to start this debate from there.
Yeah, so y'all can hear me okay?
I can hear you perfect.
Okay. So there's a part that I'll just give right off the bat. I kind of joked about it before we were live, which is like it's provocative. It gets the people going, right? So there's a certain amount of, if you have inflammatory rhetoric, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get people together, you're trying to get them unified into a tribe, you're getting them to act and all that kind of stuff. And on top of that, New York is kind of a cucked state, so you're basically behind enemy lines. So getting Republicans to act aggressively is probably more difficult than where I am, which is Florida, which basically we just do whatever the fudge we want anyways. My frustration with the video, though, is that Republicanism to me is about a republic. We have a certain set of rules. We're trying to get people to subscribe to these rules. We're trying to basically build a coherent society that has some level of social fabric. And when I hear we're going to total war, basically it might not be correct, but I'm hearing the culture war shenanigans of the past half decade. And I don't know if there's any substance, if there's any positive vision, if there's anything that we care about actually forwarding the lives of Americans to get them to vote Republican, to get them to think about Republican philosophy, to make socially conservative families, to make the economy work for a majority of the people who work instead of the people who are parasites. So these are the things that I'm concerned about, where if the Republican Party boils down to Democrats are bad, they're evil, they want to trans and gay your kids, and don't worry about the economy, that kind of scares the crap out of me, because basically I think we're not focusing on any of the problems. And then also one of the things that I really, really hate, which I'm not saying Vish is guilty of, but I would love to hear his thoughts on, is the fact that I feel like this culture war stuff is basically so we don't talk about economics. We don't talk about struggling American families. We don't talk about social conservatism or rebuilding, nuclear families. All we talk about is the trans people trying to trans your kids. And then we don't talk about how do we actually build strong American families, which are the foundation of our republic. I'll leave it there, and then we can kind of dig into it.
And before I get to Vish, everybody be sure to sneed those super chats. Thank you very much for the $5 snippets. We are going to get to your super chat after the conversation. I know, Vish, you have an hour to do this, so hopefully we're going to be able to compartmentalize everything. So anyway, Vish, go for it, brother. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Lev, and thank you for your perspective there, Counterpoints. So my retort to that would be, listen, as Richard Nixon said, losers don't legislate. And whatever you believe in, good policies, strong nuclear families, great economy, none of this matters unless you win first. And this is kind of the crux of what our argument was to the folks who were in the room that night. We had 500 people at our 110th annual gala. So, our organization has been doing this event for 110 years. So, we're steeped in a lot of history. This isn't just something that popped up overnight. Now, again, to the thesis of what we were trying to get across is that no matter what you believe in, whether you're a moderate Republican, whether you're totally fringe right, it actually doesn't matter. If you do not win, do not get yourself into the position to make the decisions that would be better for our country, that would, help move along policies and, move the country directionally to a place where we would rather have it be, whether it's economically, culturally, socially, you name it. But if you're not putting up a fight on every front available within the spectrum of the political war, the culture war, the spiritual war, I used to work for Steve Bannon, and he would say, Republicans can win elections but still manage to lose the country. And so we want to get across to folks that being a Republican is more than just showing up on election day and voting, and even more than just volunteering your time maybe to knock on a few doors, though we need all of that. And we need more. We need you to be writers. We need you to be movie stars. We need you to go, be cultural influencers, media influencers, spiritual influencers. We need pastors. We need pastors who aren't, buying into woke ideology and corrupting the word of God with heresy that you're seeing all over, from a lot of these like woke liberal sort of priests and pastors and stuff. So we are in a total, when our enemy is engaged in every sphere of influence, we need to engage in every sphere of influence. And that was the point of total war. It was that actually our political battle is a lot bigger than what we think is the battle. And so that was the point. Now, again, there can be folks that disagree with our message. And, what I think that people are processing our message as to like what we're fighting for, when instead what we're really trying to get across is how we should fight for the things that we want. And that's really, my retort to it. There's really nothing wrong with the critique that Counterpoints has provided here. All I'm saying is before we get to pushing the things that we want, we actually have to push the method in how we get the things that we want.
Sure. So I'm okay with this. I think there's a good chunk of things to be said for the fact that conservatives have neglected huge parts of our culture. So, for instance, when you're talking about education, or if you're talking about movies or pop media or criticism or any of that kind of stuff, these things are dominated by progressives and leftists and liberals. And the reason why is because for a really long time, conservatives and Republicans were basically saying, like, don't do that. That actually doesn't contribute anything to society. And what's going on now instead is, since we have lefties, progressives, liberals dominating culture and dominating education, you basically have the entire cultural sphere dominated by their worldview. And it's an uphill battle to get anybody to even concede anything libertarian, Republican, or conservative. So, like, I'll agree there. If we're opening up multiple fronts on the war, that's totally fine. But the thing that I'm worried about and frustrated by is the fact that, like, we have to know where we're going. So, for instance, you're talking about like heretical priests. I'm like a deist myself. I'm not a particularly religious person, and I think that there's like maybe a big tent philosophy of republicanism that was used for nefarious means a few years ago, where we're just like, okay, well, we love the gays, we love the transes, we love the blacks, we love the Hispanics, but we're still Republican. Therefore, don't worry about anything. And of course, the social conservatives had to take a back seat because not everybody agrees about gay marriage or being trans or any of that kind of shit, right? So I understand that the social conservatives are like, hey, like, we took a back seat. We're not taking a back seat anymore. We're going to say what we believe. And that's actually really popular with social conservatives. But then what I'm worried about is that like almost pure, like political purification, where you have social conservatives, people who are theists, people who specifically are Christian or Christian nationalists. What's happening is you might have a pure and more aggressive form of politics, but you're also pushing out a lot of people who are a lot more chill, I guess would be the word. So basically libertarians, Republicans, secularists, all that kind of stuff. And as a result, the party's weaker for it. So if there's things that we can agree on, for instance, like the strong nuclear family or capitalism being better than socialism, or maybe, basically gay people and trans people shouldn't be like murdered or persecuted, but maybe not every kid should be encouraged to be LGBTQ as a matter of culture. These are things that you could build a broader tent out of, but it feels like Christian nationalists are dominating the narrative.
I can add one quick thing before Vish responds, which is some people would say that it was the recent legislations regarding abortion almost as a trap that the Democrats set up for the Republicans, because now all of a sudden you had people coming out who were scared that they would not be able to get an abortion anymore, and as a result they voted Democrat when they otherwise would not have. So I don't know, Counterpoints, if you would agree with me that that played a role.
Yeah, so my parents have been talking to me about banning abortion since I was like 8 years old, and basically, if the conservative majority of the Supreme Court never took any action on took any action on abortion, I would actually view that as the most toothless, spineless shit that social conservatives would have ever done. So I think that it's okay to say we took a hit, in the midterms because we acted on Roe v. Wade, but that's been like a stated Republican goal for like 4 or 5 decades. So I think you just have to take the culture war hit in order to have the legislative victory. But that's kind of an aside.
Got it. All right, Vish, go for it.
Yeah, so I think, too, the more immediate point on Roe v. Wade, listen, if you have a 50-year victory, whatever the outcome is, it kind of actually doesn't matter because you have a 50-year victory that you picked up in this 1 year, right? And so the Roe v. Wade victory was a huge win for our side. I would simply argue that our side didn't do a good job of bottling up and harnessing that momentum of the win, and instead immediately got worried about what the backlash is going to be. And so I think that that's a small strategic error, but it's still, we ended up with a 5-seat majority. Maybe, I mean, you can argue that maybe we would have had a 10, 15-seat majority maybe at this point if Roe v. Wade didn't happen, but I don't even think that there's a ton of evidence that would support that. But we still got to win. And we got to win on the back of a 50-year win, which is the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Now, with that being said, to your point, Counterpoints, where you're talking about, well, does the harnessing of sort of this religious, sort of Christian or sort of godly religious rhetoric scare away, maybe more chill folks like libertarians or secular folks and whatnot? And I think that there is a small, I would push back, and I think that there's a small fallacy in that. And I think that I think today the left is so visibly unhinged and so visibly anti-life and anti-God that I think that the new consensus, what it looks like is, hey, you might be Christian and I might be Hindu and that guy might be Jewish and that guy might be Muslim, right? But we all have way more in common than whatever those guys are talking about, right? And I think that
oh no.
That's
I've been warning about it for years. It's like as soon as social conservatives learn that they have more in common with Muslim conservatives and Hispanic conservatives, the left wing is I don't know how much profanity you tolerate, but screwed would be my most tactful way to use to describe it.
Yeah, I think that is the path to a winning majority is to create more clear fault lines. If you believe in God, any kind of God, you kind of know what side you're on. And if you want to be on the other side where, honestly, if you're like vehemently anti-God is where you're ending up there, even if you don't really believe in God. I know there's Atheists for Liberty folks. I have a good buddy, Thomas Sheedy, who kind of like, who talks about this, that listen, I might be an atheist. I don't believe in God, but I don't know if going out there and codifying and purifying our society, making sure that there is no God is a good strategy, right? And so I think that making sure that there is a visible fault line between the God faction and the anti-God faction is actually our path forward to create and realign a new majority that is still can transcend race, right, and transcend some of these other divisions. And so that, I would push back and say I don't think that there's anything wrong with leaning into that kind of rhetoric. I in fact think that it serves us well to reiterate what side that we believe God is on, and there you should be confident that God is on our side when you say that.
So actually, this actually begs a very interesting question. So New York's kind of cosmopolitan. There's a lot of different kinds of people up in New York, et cetera, et cetera. So do you think that the New York Young Republicans or the New York Republicans are actually considering this, where they're like, hey, like because we had a lot of people get, I don't know, temporarily internet popular for like white nationalism and all that kind of stuff, but obviously that became something that bit them in the ass, whereas like religious or like a broad-based pseudo-religious conservatism actually can serve lots of kinds of people, including people who stereotypically didn't work with each other, like let's say social conservative Muslims and social conservative Christians. So do you think that the Republican Party is so entrenched that they're not going to be able to do that? Or do you think that they actually are listening to the younger generation saying like, hey, we don't have to be the exact same kind of Christianity or exact same faith, as long as we're socially conservative and we kind of believe in X, Y, Z, A, B, C, we can work together?
Yeah, I think that there's totally a future. I think that the New York Young Republican Club is it's a good microcosm of what could be possible. We have a very diverse membership that cuts across all sorts of religious and racial lines, etc. I think that, to your point, that, well, is the Republican establishment also seeing this as a possible path forward? I think that even if they did right now, they're not doing a really good job of unifying the message on it, and are still kind of doing the whole, well, we're going to push a Jewish message for Jews and a Muslim message for Muslims. And it's like, no, where the whole idea of being on our side is we're tired of being divided along those lines in the first place. It's more like, hey, Jews in the room, Muslims in the room, Christians, etc. We all believe in God, and the people in the other room want to take our Lord away from us, right? And so I think that right now the establishment of the Republican Party is not doing that and not focused on that, because they are still, and this is not a attack on you.
It can be a little bit of a dig. It's okay.
Yeah, but it's like, look, everyone's just focused on the economy because everyone's still locked in the mindset that it's always the materialistic solutions that will solve the issues that we're trying to solve. And I think that our society has ascended above that, where actually money is not going to solve, or material solutions are not going to solve a lot of our issues. And I think that more and more of our society is coming around to that conclusion, that it's not a materialistic issue, that there are deeper, even, I wouldn't even say systemic, but more cultural, spiritual issues that we're dealing with. And I think that people understand that.
Oh no.
Don't worry, it's New York City. There's so much 5G radiation going on, giving people all kinds of superpowers that I'm sure Vish is going to return. And everybody,
there he is. He's back.
Yeah, hey, so sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. But I was saying that, I think that, it's all these other issues that are not materialistic issues anymore that people are wising up to now and understanding that is where the fight is. And so we need to evolve our messaging and evolve our strategies to include those spaces.
Okay, so here's the thing. I don't know how conspiracy brained you are. I've been recently accused of being very conspiracy brained. I think that the United States is more akin, like the economy, the military industrial complex, the education system, politics, all that kind of stuff. I don't view this as like a speedboat. I view this as like an oil tanker. It takes like a really long time to turn it. People are going to resist your moves, all that kind of stuff. So there's something that's kind of like near and dear. Ah, shit. Did I disconnect? Can you guys hear me?
No, I hear your voice, but your video is frozen solid in a very gloomy looking expression. But you can keep talking. As long as the voice is there, that's the important thing.
No, I kicked my connection for the camera, so the camera should be coming on momentarily.
Yeah, no problem at all.
But basically, the thing that I worry about is that there's this isolationism. So you talk about like spirituality, you know, Americanism, social conservatism, all that kind of stuff. I think those are all things that people can align on. What I think that the new Republicans, the young Republicans, the people who are focused on spirituality, or the people who are focused on you know, basically like what is this next generation going to offer social conservatives going forward, is the fact that we're already part of what I would view as a $65 trillion commercial empire. Everybody who's aligned with us, pretty much everybody except for like Russia, China, Venezuela, North Korea, they are all aligned with us economically, and we're economically interdependent. I don't think that we have to be as dependent as we are now. I don't think we have to invade every single country on the face of the planet every time there's a problem. But I still think that the isolationist rhetoric of the Republicans that sometimes can feel like super naive, where they're just like, oh yeah, we're just going to like pull up stakes. You know, we're just going to leave the entire country or the rest of the world to do their own shit. If China seizes power, it's not our problem. And then as a result, what happens is the military industrial complex and commercial enterprises, they're always going to be against this kind of isolationism, and they're going to fuck you left, right, and center, and they're going to buy your politicians off. So that's where, how do you speak to that? Like what I view as almost like isolationist naivete that's a part of like the MAGA movement.
Yeah, so I'm not an isolationist, but I do think that our the way we handle our international relations today is all messed up, and I wouldn't say the word is pre-modern, but it's like outdated. I think it's all outdated the way we handle our international relations. I am very much somebody who does not want to see China rise above America. I do not want to see Russia rise above America. I am very much an American exceptionalist and believe that we should remain exceptional compared to these other nations. But we don't do ourselves a service in pushing and building up and displaying American exceptionalism when we're out. Not only are we out, you know, getting involved militarily in a lot of conflicts, whether that's, you know, official or unofficial, or Congress sanctions it or not, but we also come home with a lot of egg on our face, and there's no reason to put our veterans, I think, in that position where the mission is not clear and victory is not properly defined. And I think that too much of our conflicts have devolved into a situation where our leadership, especially our military leadership, loses sight of what the definition of victory is and what it actually looks like and what it's supposed to be. And our soldiers then also lose that vision because they can't see it, because their leader doesn't see it and can't communicate it. And we're all like, and all our boys are stuck in the desert, dude, you know, and we lose or have egg on our face, and then our people are at home are spending all sorts of blood and treasure, you know, for this fiasco. So I just think that even if even if I wanted to continue the policy of interventionism and exporting the libertarianism and exporting democracy or whatever, at the very least, you have to have stone cold killers running your military operation who are, at the very least, be like, listen, man, I'm going to go blow up that town. And that's what victory is. And we're going to do that, and we're done. And we're out after that, right? I prefer that kind of leader than somebody who's going to tell me, well, we're actually going to turn Sweden out of Afghanistan, right? Like, that's nonsense, right? So
well,
that's
okay.
My
I don't want to lose this thought because basically I feel like you articulated it so beautifully, and it's the perfect metaphor for when I hear young Republicans in New York declaring total war. What I'm concerned with is, what is the vision? What do we want our troops to do? What does victory look like? And these are the kinds of things that, like, I could tell you what victory looks like to me. Victory looks like to me like average Americans are able to work maybe 1.5, 2 jobs, right? As a couple, they can pay their bills, put food on the table, and buy some some toys for their kids. That might be materialistic, but that's still something that's spiritual because you actually spend time for your family. It's ignoring the hedonism and consumerism of our modern culture, where basically everything has been gutted and boiled down to what can you buy, what can you own, and that's how important you are. And we don't even talk about, as conservatives, hey, maybe instead of dad working 80-hour weeks in order to pay the bills, maybe he needs to work 40 or 50-hour weeks. That way he can spend 20 to 30-hour weeks at home taking care of his kids and raising his children. So that's where, for me, like the totally laissez-faire economic Republicans have absolutely fucking lost me. Where, of course, like, capitalism is better than socialism and communism, but just because you like care about capitalism or care about the entrepreneurial spirit or any of that kind of shit doesn't mean that you should basically be like, oh, you're poor and you're stupid, you should work 80-hour weeks and ignore your kids. That's going to be good for society. And so that, for me, is like, I think that if you agree with me on what I just said, it's going to be an uphill battle, because the old guns of the Republican Party, they care more about the money than they care about the people. It's more about protecting capitalism and, like, working stuff and, like, all that kind of stuff than it is about, like, I don't know, readjusting our society to be more spiritual or more family oriented, or to make sure that Americans can actually have decent lives. So what I'm worried about, part of the reason why the GOP probably might not listen to you as much as you want them to, is because if you agree with me, you're challenging that status quo where republicanism just means low taxes for rich people. And that, from a policy standpoint, that's all it is. So last point, I swear. So what my worry is like, you and me can agree on rhetoric all day, social conservatism, families, like all that kind of stuff. But if we don't have a game plan and a vision and an execution and a footprint and a blueprint for our troops as Republicans to execute, then what's going to happen is the vision is going to be stolen by people who only care about the finances of it. And they're going to use your rhetoric to back up goals that you don't agree with. And so that's my sincere fear when I see fiery, angry young Republicans giving fire and brimstone speeches, but I have no idea what the fudge the plan is.
Right. So, well, if you're looking for the plan, in terms of, well, how do we win? That's actually, something that, again,
what do you do when you win?
But when you do win, then then the question is, okay, well, you guys won. What are the policies now, right? Or what were the policies?
That's where I think the people with money are going to make the decisions at that point. It's already too late, in my opinion.
Well, see, that's the thing. You don't know until you get to that situation first, right? I'm a Bill Belichick kind of guy, right? One battle at a time, right? And so one game at a time, right? Don't look ahead to, like, well, what if once we get there, like, what are we going to do? Get there first. Right? You need to focus on the defined victory. What is the actual next step we need to secure? And so that is kind of like, as a sort of head coach or a general in the movement, that would be my focus, right? Now, obviously, we would like to get a leader in there who would advocate for, I'm very much an America first guy. My 3 pillars are immigration. We need to cut down immigration, illegal, legal, you name it. I want to see that brought down. I want to see more aggressive trade policies that curb the excesses and the inefficiencies that are existent with, China and some of these other countries that exploit really cheap labor and take American jobs, out of our economy, out of our system. And then also, I'm very much a anti-war populist. I don't want to see unreasonable conflicts. Our veterans and our people spending blood and treasure to get involved in unreasonable conflicts. And I'd like to just kind of like, hey, can we go back to those days when like Congress had to declare war and like the president couldn't just unilaterally engage us in like years-long conflicts with no approvals, right? Like, so that, you know, those are the immediate three pillars. Now, if I could sit there and if you asked me on each thing, you know, each policy plank, what the position is, I think you would probably agree with most of them, and I think most Republicans would probably agree with most of them. What I think is, you know, the rub is like, well, how seriously do you take the enemy on the other side, right? I think that is really the question, where we're like, look, man, they want to. This is a fight for control of the most powerful nation on earth. They will do everything in their power by any means necessary, and so should we, right? That's all we're saying, right? And that certainly can rub people the wrong way, because the person that hears that might be like, hey, look, you know, the Democrat that sits across from me is not like my biggest enemy in the world. And, you know, that might be true to them in that case, but, you know, we're not talking about any one person or any one particular thing. We're talking about movements as a whole. We're talking about, you know, the paradigm as a whole. And, you know, at this point, I sincerely believe the left is on a total warpath to destroy America and its history and its culture and its society and its children, you know? And so I am willing to do a lot to stop that. And I am willing to push a message to convince others to join me that they need to do a whole lot to stop that. And if they believe that, that's what they should do.
Yeah, this is almost precisely my exact fear. So I don't doubt your, you know, I don't think that people can really have like two brains running simultaneously for too long without like, you know, their real motives being shown. So I believe you. I believe that you're passionate, that you're trying to get people energized, that you believe it's an existential fight, that you want people to join the fight, you want them to take it seriously, you believe that your opponents are serious about their end goals, and you want to see that energized base come back in the opposite direction. I believe you totally. The things that scare me because I've been ingesting and paying attention to politics since the 80s. I was born in the 80s, and you know, early 90s my parents were raising me with this stuff. They're very politically active, and so I listen to conservatives and I listen to libertarians, capitalists, historians, all that kind of stuff, and I'm like, I know that my historical and political perspectives are correct, but when I vote in my side, the only thing that happens is the same shit that happened the day before, and lower taxes. And so if that's going to keep happening, I want to figure out a way to break the cycle.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, man, there's really no good answer to this. I don't know if you've ever worked like in politics or in government or anything like that. I have some experience working in the House, working on the Hill. You know, I've seen behind the scenes how these decisions get made, and some of the calculus that goes into how these sitting elected officials make their decisions. And, you know, quite bluntly, the issue is personnel over policy, or personnel determines policy all the time. Personnel is policy. And so, look, you know, I can tell you right now, there's there's 435 members of the House. You could probably count on your hands how many of them you could rely on to actually stick to the values that they campaigned on and to do the things that they said that they would do. The rest, you have no idea what they're going to do, but probably because you have no idea who they are, right? And so, like that, you know, there's the problem is that a lot of these people hope to never be famous or be in the spotlight and just go to DC, you know, quietly vote whatever way the leadership tells them to vote, so that they can continue sitting in that seat, getting the money for re-election, getting the support for re-election, blah, blah, blah. We have a very sort of big problem of a occupational class that sits in those seats to just sit in those seats, as opposed to
is this wasted energy?
No, it's not. You can't, because you can't be like, well, even if we tried to change that, we're gonna win. The guy's gonna get there and he's not gonna serve us. that might be true, but you don't know till you get there, right? It's just the way the game works.
Sure, but let's just say I'm a dictator of the Republican Party temporarily. I have like some influence, whatever. Like people should still obviously everything you said, total war, right? People should still get jazzed up, go vote, make sure that the people that you're voting for align with your values. Try to make sure that your vision of the world is implemented as much as possible. Try to identify what's important to you. Blah blah blah. All of that's great, but also it seems like there's a lot of energy that we are spent in a lot of money, by the way, which kind of gets gross after a little bit, which gets dumped into the system of the occupational class that you're talking about, the people who go there to sit on ass and just click the right buttons when they're told to, right? So for me, it's like the culture itself is in dire straits, where we talk about like kids being raised without parents, and schools that are overrun with violence, and people not knowing how to act as adults, and all this kind of crap that we just see pretty much posted to our social media all the time. But then we also are talking smack to people who are trying to fix the problem, whether they're like EMTs, cops, firefighters, teachers, whatever. We basically say, oh well, that's not important. What is important is just making money and all that kind of crap. I'm not saying this is like a conscious rhetorical thing. I'm just saying that like society kind of looks down on people who make 40 grand a year in public service. That's all I'm saying. And so for me, I would start like rather than having this, I don't know, Andrew Tate grind mindset. Everybody has to be a millionaire, have a Bugatti, become a Muslim conservative, be polygamous while running hoes. Also, but I'm also Republican and I love Trump. Rather than all that kind of crap, where we basically we only tell people about electoral crap, and then we kind of have this like, I don't know, hyper capitalist fever dream grind 1980s mindset. I think we have to start encouraging men just to be men, meaning that they're responsible for their family, for having a partner, for raising their kids, for being involved in their community.
But are people going to click on that?
Generation.
Are people going to click on that? That's the problem. We're in a circus right now.
Do
and in the
both
circus
simultaneously. You can have Vish come out and say, we're at total war, and then you can have Counterpoints come on and say, hey, get married and take care of your fudging kids, you pieces of garbage. And by the way, I would cuss more, but Vish hasn't cussed, so I don't want to assume anything.
That's fair enough.
But basically I'm saying you use the heat to drive the culture. Like one of the things you mentioned, Steve Bannon or whatever, I think one of the most he might have been the most politically impactful people in the past decade through the sheer concept of like him popularizing politics as downstream from culture. I think everybody believes that now. So the question is, what kind of culture do conservatives and Republicans want to build? Because if it's just bitching and moaning about like trans teachers and then cutting taxes for rich people, I'm out.
No, that's totally fair. I think we've seen a lot of people drop out based on that, and I think that it's incumbent on the sort of like official party apparatchiks and like those people who live and breathe the movement to convince you why you need to be on here, why you need to be in the movement and continue voting and stuff like that. I think that, you definitely have a point that a lot of people misuse this heat and energy just for lower taxes and, basically to serve the material financial interests of our elites, right? And so I think that it's a totally fair critique. But maybe let's to take a step back, you were saying, I believe that we need to have, men need to forget what Andrew Tate is saying about the grind set and all this stuff. We need men to get married and take care of their kids. And it's like, hey, I agree with you, right? Counterpoints, 100%. I agree with you. Let's take a step back. How do I get married? Right? And it's like, what's the answer there? Is there a political answer for that? And so I like, you could say like, just go get married and have kids. And it's like, yeah, but like, you're kind of missing and a very important aspect to that. It's like, what gets women to want to marry a guy? Right. And so, and if there's an answer there. And then from there, it's like, and it's a rather real, right? It's like, you have to be of stable income. You can't be a total weirdo. You have to take a shower every day, right? There's a couple of answers there that you have to have in place before you can get to, the ultimate mission is to get married so that you take care of a woman, and then you have children and you take care of those children. Now you're a one man taking care of you, yourself, plus three others. Now you're being a productive and useful member of society. That is the ultimate end state, right? But to get there, you kind of need a little Andrew Tate, man. You kind of need your boys. You kind of need your boys to go out there trying to be their best, right? Because you're trying to spark societal change, but society is built up of these individual units called men and women, right? And so you need to inspire each individual person to go and take steps towards societal ingratiation. And so you can't, like, I know where you want to get to, but you can't get to where you're trying to go without answering like the most immediate problem that's sitting in between, which is how do we get men and women together again, right? And like you see them falling marriage rates, you see, the sort of explosion in single men, single women, before we get to solve the problem, get more men and women married and make them have kids. Yeah, let's start with how do we get them married? How do we get them to actually be like, okay, yeah, let's do this, right? That's, I think we one game at a time. Again, right? I'm still very Belichickian on this.
But the building blocks for me. So if we were talking about like one game at a time, one thing in front of you. So you might. If you're working for them full time or even part time, you're a keynote, you're able to, work in this world. I want to work in this world, right? If literally I could sit down with just like Republican strategists and people all day long and just talk their ear raw about like my perspectives on their crap, I would do that. But my problem is that I feel like, and I'm not expecting you to like change your mind instantaneously in this conversation. I just want you to think about it. Hopefully it just rings home a little bit. You're kind of winning the big game. Like you're going after the electoral stuff. You're going to get Republicans in office. They might, be able to push some stuff that you think is important. They might be able to vote yes or no on critical bills. As a result, that's all important. But what I'm kind of saying is that the practice matches and the logistics and the food and the diet and all the stuff that goes into creating strong players and creating a good game, all of that is fallen apart. And it's borderline fallen apart because the people who win the championship say, well, I got mine. I got my food. I got my, custom chef. I got my millions of dollars. I got my electoral system. So as a result, does anybody really need anything else? Do we need to raise a new generation of athletes? Do we need to make sure that they have dietitians and coaches and athletic trainers and physical therapists and all that stuff to make them as good as they want to be? And as a result, the culture is weaker and poorer because the people who are in power, the people that you're fighting the big game for, they don't give a shit about the people who are coming in the next generation. So that's kind of where, for me, it's like, God bless you for fighting the fight the way that you're fighting it. And I'm not trying to like put you on blast in front of fucking Lord knows you probably rub elbows with these people. But I think that somebody needs to be in that room. It's not me. And somebody needs to push back about these people and say like, hey, if you don't care about education, the next people not everybody is going to be able to go to private school. Not everybody is going to be able to get vouchers. So if our public schools are trash and they're run by progressives and liberals are going to win the next generation. And it's just going to be like that until the cows come home. If families can't afford to pay their bills, we're fucked. Everybody's going to stay separated from each other. It's going to be hookup culture. Parents aren't going to take care of their kids because they don't even have the financial ability to do so. So why would I dedicate the next 18 years of my life working at the Dollar General for $8 an hour when basically all my bills cost $20 an hour? And I know I can't take care of my kid. I can't get him Christmas presents. I can't keep his mama's power on. So as a result, it's better if Uncle Sam pays that utility bill and I'll just come in every now and then and get him like a $10 gift. Like that's the kind of crap where I feel like the left is like sprinting away with systemic analysis, and I feel like they're totally disingenuous pieces of shit, so don't get it twisted. But the right wing is just like, we'll bootstrap out of every problem we have, and I just think it's a losing strategy. So yeah, I'll stop ranting there.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that you have a very good point that, like, yeah, the people who have power secured power, and then we're just like, well, we have the power, we don't really care what comes after us because we have the power, right? And so, what do we really need to worry about? Yeah, I mean, that works for a certain amount of time, but it also, like, when you do that, you don't just allow your your apparatus or machine in general to atrophy. Your own uh, machinery and apparatus withers over time too, right? I love the movie Dark Knight Rises. I'm sure one of the videos that you saw, I think the music bed was one of those songs. But he says something when when the first fight scene with Bane and Batman, Batman throws a
He has
punch and he
defeated
says,
you.
yeah, he says peace has cost you strength, victory has defeated you, right? And so you have the game is actually, look, man, you got to lock yourself in the room with the people and stay as long as you can, and then at the right moment, you fucking strike, and like you're in charge. Like it is a long game. What I mean, the game of power is not easy, and it will not just be handed over to you. It is something you have to fight viciously for, whether it's against your side or whether it's against the other side, right? A huge part of our programming for the gala that night, and when we were taught, like when we made our speeches, you know, as much heat that we had for the Democrats, we had just as much heat for Republicans and Republicans in leadership in our speeches. I, by name, call out Kevin McCarthy in my speech, right, saying we know you're a pussy. I called him a pussy in my speech, and so I told him to step. I said you need to step aside and let like the new guys handle this,
There
right?
is
Because
a
you don't have.
oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
so that's it's all about, you have to take it one way or another. But if you cede ground, it'll never happen,
There is
right?
a
And
side issue
so
that I wanted
that's
to
the
get
part.
to, though. There is
Yeah.
a side issue that I want to get to, which I want to make sure we have time for, which is, let's say you are able to succeed, and let's say the problems that Counterpoints brings up are able to be solved more or less. There is another problem, which is what I'm at least noticing is that the people who are on the side of, let's say, the MAGA Republicans, people who are on the side of Tucker Carlson, whatever point the other side, be it Democrats, be it neocons, whoever you want to say, brings up, is always going to be viewed as wrong. And my problem there is that it creates a bubble. And like I said in the beginning, the reason why I made Break the Rules is it's supposed to pop the bubbles. So, given, let's say, the recent war between Russia and Ukraine right now, I am noticing a lot of people on the MAGA side. I'm not saying that they are pro Russia, but they are very much convinced that it is possible to make a deal, to make peace with Putin, even though, at least if you were to believe me for a second, Putin is not capable of striking any deal with anybody. He is not to be trusted. But when it comes to anybody bringing that up, the concern that I have here is that if somebody were to bring that up who would be on your side, there would be too much pressure not to listen to them because everybody else is not in agreement. And I don't think that makes you stronger. I think in the long term that makes you weaker. Because when we end up in a situation like World War II, after the First World War, nobody wanted to get into a war. We had the Great Depression, even more so, nobody wanted to fight. And as a result, I think it ended up costing us way, way more since we didn't take Hitler out in the very beginning. So that is one example I want to bring up of something that I feel the blinders that you talked about leading people into victory don't end up helping out in the long run. What can we possibly do to fight against that? So I know Counterpoints, if
Yeah.
you want to add anything into that, yeah.
Yeah, I want to give Vish something to deal with. So for instance, like I feel like there's things that you can say that will just be popular because people want to hear them, which is bring the boys home, don't spend a lot of money, too much blood and treasure, undeclared wars, all that kind of stuff. That's all very popular. But there's the reality on the ground, which is, if I could be conspiratorial because I'm in the right place for it, I think that there's a perpetual motion machine of defense industry contractors and congressmen who want to keep the military going for a really long time. And basically, they want to spend $50,000 on missiles that blow up a $300 tent because it makes a couple of people rich. And also, let's face it, the technology is pretty fucking cool. Okay. It's cool. So, basically what's happening there is you have a unaligned interest where the MAGA movement is very isolationist. The old guard is very interventionist and technological and redistributive and all that kind of stuff. And if you actually want power, I think you can't be like, yeah, bring all the boys home all the time. But I think you can strike a middle ground where you can approach the defense contractors and the people who are getting F-35 jets built in their districts. And we're like, you can have your F-35 jets. You can have your drones and your missiles and all that kind of stuff. But every time that America has a problem, we're not sending in the troops every single time in order to do everything all the time. And on top of that, we're expecting like a broader degree of congressional supervision in order to engage in conflict. And basically, the war on terror is a self-perpetuating machine where we're never going to run out of Muslims to drone strike. So we would like a more intelligent way to handle this shit. And I think that if you, as long as the defense contractors are getting paid, as long as they're developing new technology and the Navy SEALs and the Special Forces guys get to go out and kill somebody every now and then, I think you can keep those people happy. But saying that like, nah, you can't kill anybody anymore, and on top of that, you're not getting any money, these people are never going to let you take power. And so that's where I just feel like there has to be like a little bit of maturity where we have to look at the rest of the country. And if you've primed your base to say, nah, bring the boys home, screw all the neocons, you're just never getting anywhere. Maybe I'm being too pragmatist and too centrist, but that's where I'm at, where like, I'm scared that the good things about MAGA are going to get lost and the bad things about MAGA are going to get amplified. And that's partially because of the lack of vision. You're saying Bill Belichick, you just want to win the next game. I'm saying like your game is going to get hijacked by people who don't even want you to win.
I think that's totally fair critique. If I to maybe unwind some of this, to some of these points you make, both of you guys, I would ask: is the United States at war with Russia?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Well, this is that's an unofficial thing, right? There's no. This is actually the crux of my point, is that if you want to go mix it up with Russia, fucking own it, right? Like, go and be like, we're going to war with Russia because fuck Putin, blah, blah, blah. We're going to blow him to bits. Like, go do it in name. Don't mess around. Tell your boys, like, we're going to blow them to smithereens. Total victory is Putin's defeat. I want his head on a silver platter, right? That's very defined. It makes sense. That's something my boys can do, right? But right now, you're stuck in the miasma of, are we at war? Well, we're kind of not really. So we could send them some weapons, but we can only send them some ground troops, and we're not really at war with them, but Ukraine is our ally, and we got to support them. But legally, we can all... Once you get mired in all of this, this is what the people hate. Right? Like,
but that's been history. Like, the United States gave money to the USSR during World War II, so this was even before they went to war themselves. Well, this is like a regular thing.
I want him to finish, and then I have a point that I want him to consider. Because basically, I'm not trying to convince you in this conversation. I just want to give you some stuff to think about.
I just think that we are trying to we are playing faux empire where we're a democracy, we're good guys, and we don't really we fight for democracy, but we're not at war with Russia officially, but we are at war with Putin ideologically, and it's a lot of waffling. It's like our people hate this about our leaders, that they just can't own their shit. Like, just say we're, you know what I mean? And so like, if we're at war with Russia, say it, declare it, and let's go. Right, but this is the problem: is that our elites are too busy misleading the people as to what the actual terms of engagement are, and then on top of that, we don't know if our taxpayer is being fleeced with legit expenditures overseas with our foreign aid, or illegitimate expenditures, right? I'm a very conspiratorial guy too. I believe Ukraine to be the laundromat for the globalist elites for their cash, and I think that there's a lot of funny business going on, which is immediately why I'm against that. But like, the whole structure of it all, where we don't own the actual intervention or action, and we're doing
But
it.
I want to make sure Counterpoints gets
there's 2 points
that's what I
here.
hate.
Yeah, there's 2 points here. So one, just for the immediate point to whether or not we're getting fleeced, I'm sure there is funny business. I mean, you go watch like Iraq for Sale, the documentary on the Iraq War. You see how the contractors took, for like a single bag of laundry, they charged like $120, and basically they paid some like poor Malaysian woman in order to wash it, and they pocket 90% of the profit. Absolutely, like war is a racket. That's what Smedley Butler, a famous Marine, said. So this is totally true. I would concede it almost instantaneously. But for me, as a veteran, somebody who basically served during the global war on terror and has been abreast of politics for like the better part of 2 decades, the Afghan national government collapsed in 11 days. The Ukrainian government has been fighting for almost a full year. So basically, take however much money we spent on Afghanistan, we're getting 10 times, 20 times, 30 times the bang for the buck out of Ukraine. Now that's still like a very Machiavellian, Darwinian, perspective, whatever. I get it. But basically, I'm saying if you were concerned with like fucked up investment, excuse my French, Ukraine is still an infinitely more viable investment than Afghanistan. Then the point that I wanted you to consider is basically Clausewitz has this quote that I absolutely love, which is war is just diplomacy by other means. And so raised by warriors and soldiers and generals and real-time strategy video games and all that kind of stuff, the oftentimes from like a boot level perspective, what you're thinking is like what you're trained on, which is I'm here to destroy the enemy. The enemy's here to destroy me. If I destroy them first or screw up their supply lines or whatever, I'm going to win. If they screw up my supply lines, if they kill my guys, they're going to win. Let's fight out the battle like it's a chessboard. But the truth is that that's not really true. If that was true, then one, Ukraine would have been steamrolled 6 months ago because basically Putin would have glassed Kyiv. Literally, Kyiv would just be, it would be flattened. It wouldn't exist anymore. But because conflict is on a spectrum of diplomacy, he knows that if he glasses an entire city filled with a few 100,000 civilians, the entire world is going to come for his throat. So that's where conflict isn't this clean, objective stuff. And also with, I've mentioned a dozen times that I think that as a centrist who's always looking to end conflict, I think that Ukraine should give up especially if there's popular referendums, particularly if there's like majority ethnic Russian enclaves in the eastern part of the country, they should just give those territories up. Donetsk, Luhansk, it goes to Russia. It's now Russian territory. Crimea is Russian territory. But then Zaporozhye and Kherson should go back to the Ukrainians just because blah, 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 geographic reasons for maintaining easy borders. That's my opinion. But it's not my fucking country. And on top of that, the Ukrainians seem willing to fight it. And I've been told that if, Zelensky concedes these territories, he's actually just going to be knocked out of power because nobody else in the country would agree with his attempt to broker a peace. So my point here is basically like, if war and death and destruction are means of diplomacy, then, and we just have to view them as extensions of diplomacy, what would you believe America wants based off of its international actions? And for me, it has nothing to do with democracy. Kind of, maybe human freedom a little bit. But realistically, it's about running a $65 trillion global commercial empire that keeps people rich, keeps them fed, keeps them fat, and keeps them happy. And by the way, you can view that as nefarious because we're being lied to about it. But you can't say that's not important, because whether or not you and I have food, electronics, entertainment, the ability to communicate, those are all important things.
Yeah, I mean, look, those are all fair concerns, and I would say that you're right. Yeah, America's trying to maintain a $65 trillion commercial empire, but America has some very glaring built-in weaknesses, right? And if I was Russia, if I was Putin right now, I would do the same thing that the Taliban did. That's sit and wait for the political will in America for the war to dry up, which is very easy because we shift leadership on a 2-year, 4-year, 8-year basis. And with that goes grand vision as well, right? And so actually what you're seeing is that I think that this war is really being pumped for short-term purposes, some midterm messaging, so showing Biden is strong and not weak. It's all these, a couple of payouts to some military industrial contractors who donated to the Biden campaign, right? They're like the Ukraine war is really being used to satisfy these short-term conditions, and in the long term it's gonna die out because that's just the way America is built, right? It's not built for long-term political conflicts because the long-term political will generally tends to wither away because the leadership is not there long enough to see it through. It is just a natural consequence of the way our system is built. And ultimately, like, no matter what, we're going to spend a ton of money and we're likely not going to get anything out of it other than the same result we saw in Afghanistan, except the real tragedy is it'll take us 20 years to figure it out.
Before Counterpoints, you reply, I just want to add one quick thing, which is if something's not done about the situation with Russia and Putin right now, unfortunately, it's not going to be Russia going back with its tail between its legs. They're forced to be in the position, at least Putin is, where the only way he remains in power is if he keeps expanding. And if America's not going to support, then Russia's going to keep expanding from one place to another, like they tried doing in Georgia with Southern Ossetia, like they tried to do in Moldova with New Transnistria during the Yeltsin administration, which did work. The first one did not, thanks to George W. Bush, actually. But anyway, the point is that if Russia keeps expanding, eventually it is going to become our problem once again. So it's a question of when do we pay for it? Do we pay for it now or do we pay for it later? And how much are we going to have to pay for it later?
Okay, now I got to steelman Vish.
Okay.
Is Eastern Europe like America's, vital national security interest? So I can make like a 10-head, 10,000 IQ argument that, like natural gas and petroleum stability and like, dragging people away from Eastern Europe, from Russian like influence is going to be important for like American strategic goals. But the truth is that this is Europe's interest. This is Europe's power bills that are getting paid. This is American blood and treasure that's guaranteeing the thing. But then just to steelman my own point, I don't think that thinking of America as a national force, it's a national force. But I think that the way that we're being used, the only way it's explainable is if America views itself at the head of an empire similar to Rome, where we don't have to rule, like there don't have to be American troops on the ground in every single place on the planet. But at the same time, we expect every place on the planet that's within our sphere of influence, they're going to trade with us. They're going to give us good deals. And if somebody fucks with our shit, we're basically gonna jack that person up. And that's the only way that you can explain Ukraine, because to be honest, I don't think half of America could spot Ukraine on a map up until this conflict.
Before Vish's final response, Vish, I know you got a ghosting brother, and before your final response, I just want to say that I wish the wine-sipping Europeans were a little bit more considerate of their own future. I don't see them being right now. I really wish there were, because frankly speaking, America has been picking up a lot of the slack for Europe after World War II. Not so much Eastern Europe. I think Poland is a little bit more aware of what's going on, but as far as the wine-sipping Europeans of Western Europe, they definitely have to get their shit in order. But the problem is that right now they're not, and because right now they're not, unfortunately, it is America's responsibility once again. But anyway, Vish, final words, because I know you got to go, brother, and I do want to read the super chat, which may be directed to you as well, which is from Nimitz. $5. GOP needs to actually roll back laws and learn to work lawfare. Shut the government down if necessary to prevent awful budgets and bad debt. GOP are pansies. All right, Vish, whatever you want to talk about here, you got the floor, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just my final sort of to the last point that Counterpoints made, look, whatever it is, just own it. Are we the empire or not? Right? Like that's I want a definitive answer on that. If we are an empire, let's roll like an empire, right? But I don't want the, oh, we're not an empire, we're a friend to the world, but we're gonna send $2 trillion to bomb the shit out of Putin. None of that makes sense. right? And so that's my issue. If we are an empire, let's own it, let's declare it, and act like it. But none of this like in between. I'm trying to be a weasel. I'm trying to be your friend and like stab you in the back shit too, right? That's what I don't like. And so that is my contention to that. To the super chat, Nemitz. You're totally right. Go check out Gavin Wax's speech. When he says he declares total war, he states that clearly we have to go to war in the courtroom, at the ballot box, right? The courtroom, that is lawfare. Another aspect, a very important aspect to the GOP's victory in years to come. And so, we are on it. We're doing our best as young Republicans. Again, we're just young Republicans, man. We got a nice little club. We got some friends. We had a little money to throw an event. And, we're trying to do our best to push as big a message and as bold a message as possible. And that's what we're doing. And we had a bunch of great players in the room that we delivered that message to. They were the audience that night, right? And that's, the whole idea is, well, we want to be in the room to get in these people's ears. That's what we're doing, right? And we created our own opportunity to do that. And so, we encourage other people who have that ability and opportunity out there to do it and get the people in their area and in their spheres of interest in the room and tell them what it is. Tell them what you want, because we did that. And guess what? The whole world is talking about what we asked for in that room that night, right? So that is the level of impact that we're hoping that everyone who's concerned about this country has and is willing to go out there and do. And everybody has the chance and opportunity to go do that if they are willing to like show up and fight. And so that's our message. I had a wonderful counterpoints. I think that this was a great conversation. I wouldn't even call it a debate. I think that it was really a good conversation. And I really appreciate your time. Lev, thank you so much for having me. Is there any other super chats you would like me to address before I bounce?
All right, so everybody, see if you can sneak any super chats in the remaining couple of minutes. Also, beware of Gavin's evil twin brother, Gavin Wayne. And lastly, one thing that I wish we could have covered if we had more time is, we have a 10 super chat. Good stuff. Thanks, BTR, Counter, and Vish. That is from Chase T. Thank you so much, Chase T. One thing I wish we could have covered is the Constitution question, because Trump talking about terminating certain things in the Constitution. That was a point you brought up. Vish, I don't want to hold you up if you got to go right now. It just would be amiss if that was not covered. I don't know, like counterpoints. Would you want to add? Yeah.
I do want to add something to that. So actually, our club put out a statement in the wake of the Mar-a-Lago raid that happened in August. And we kind of honestly already echoed what Trump was saying months before he did. Our club, our legacy actually extends back to 1856, when President Lincoln had given a speech to at Cooper Union in Manhattan to what was called the Young Men's Republican Union at that time. And that's sort of the ancestor to our club today. And as a quick history lesson, lest we not forget what Lincoln thought was appropriate measures to save the Union, save the Republic at that time, which was suspending the writ of habeas corpus. He went and had sitting congressmen arrested, right? Like if you really want to save the Republic and you feel that strongly, there's some things you got to do. You got to crack some eggs, man. And so I do not, maybe I wouldn't have said suspend the Constitution like, President Trump had said, but there are some things that need to be considered. There are tools in the toolkit that need to be considered when you're talking about saving the Union from nefarious forces and forces that have upended the Constitution. One thing that I want to the last final point that I want to make is that you're trying to do not fight moral battles with enemies with no morals, right? If they don't respect your moral lines, they will
I gotta get counterpoints to respond on this.
No, it's fine. I want to. If Vish has a heart out, I want to make sure that he can get his words out. I'm good.
All right. With that being said, Vish, you muted yourself. There we go. All right, you gotta go. All right, Vish, thank you so much for coming in. It was a great pleasure. Counterpoints Connor, thank you so much for coming in. And don't forget, everybody, next Friday, January 6th, Counterpoints is going to be on Break the Rules once again with none other than Curtis Yarvin, aka Mencius Moldbug. And we are going to be, I guess, kind of continuing this conversation right now, what Vish just talked about, as far as what line should be crossed at what point. And I think that goes into the whole Imperium thing. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, click the bell. The bell is extremely important. And also patreon.com/breaktherules. Become a patron. We are going to have a Break the Rules Patreon-only stream about art and artificial intelligence coming up real soon. So if you want to be a part of that stream, being in there for the stream, become a patron, and you are going to get first dibs on that. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Vish, where can people find you before we go, since you're right here?
Yeah, find me on Twitter at Vish Burra. Find me on Truth Social at Vish. Find me on Getter at Vish Burra. TikTok at Vish Burra. I'm mostly on Twitter. Thank you.
All right, and Counterpoints, where can people find you?
So typing Counterpoints common spelling into YouTube, you'll find my Warhammer 40,000 content, which is very nerdy. I understand that. But I kind of I still stream there primarily and do political debates, conversations, all that kind of stuff. I do have a debate or streaming channel called Counterpoints Coliseum. So if you want to see me debating or talking to political nerds, then go ahead and type that in. And then I am launching an essay channel as well, where I just want to go over that kind of stuff. Actually, I think I'm a little bit inspired. Vish, basically inspired me. If there's people who are throwing down in the Young Republicans Club up in New York and they kind of got the balls to do what they want to do, I can sit here and bitch about the way that they do it, or I can go join the Young Republicans and then everybody can bitch about the way that I do it. And I think that's a perfectly fine thing. And I know it takes a lot of balls, to be blunt, to get out into the public eye, know that 10 million people are going to judge you for what you say and what you believe. But the truth is, at the end of the day, these conversations are important and the future of the Republic is important. Yeah.
There we go. That was wonderful. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, on Friday. Take care, everybody. Mwah! Good night, everybody. Bye-bye. And follow me on Twitter